Well, good morning. Back in the shop today. I have the chuck that came with the last Sheldon Lathe that I acquired, and I'm going to do a little modification to it. So, and a lot of things you see on the channel, there's projects that I want to be working on, like the planer and the Atlas stuff and things like that. Those are the ones that I do mainly for my enjoyment and to improve my shop capabilities. And this is one of those projects too, but since this is still a working shop in a lot of respects for different things, why there's projects that I need to do. And one of the things that I manufacture, I need a chuck that will hold on the lathe that will hold basically 4 different diameters, and they're fairly large diameters, a couple of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 3-jaw chuck right here, and I'm going to dedicate it to that process. So what my plan is, this is an old Union chuck, I believe is the manufacturer of it. Yeah, Union Manufacturing. It's a 7.5-inch chuck, and like I say, it came with this last Sheldon, and it's a piece of crap. I mean, it's wore out. At one time it may have been a good chuck, but it's definitely wore out now. The jaws are definitely bell-mouthed. You know, we can look at the wear marks that are on the serrations on the jaws when I get it apart, and we'll take a look at it then. A lot of slop in them, and we'll look at that when we get there, although that's not a major concern. But what I'm going to do with this chuck is I'm going to convert it into a interchangeable jaws type of thing. And what I'll do is, I've already checked these jaws. They're about a 45 to 50 Rockwell according to my little files. And what I'm going to do is set them up either on the mill or on the shaper for right now, and we're going to shave those off to where they're, you know, level with all the chucks. Then we'll set up a bolt-on set of jaws for it, and we'll make, you know, at least 4 sets of those jaws probably to hold the different diameters. So basically I can unscrew probably 6 bolts, set a new set of jaws on there with whatever diameter ring I want, with a welded steel ring to hold the round stock that I want in there, and then tighten them down. We're just going to dedicate it to that. So let me bring it a little bit closer. This 7.5-inch chuck, it's definitely seen better days. It does have proper thread on the back end, on the backing plate, although it's quite a bit thicker than what it is. The backing plate is a proper thread, and it does fit on the other Sheldon. Both the spindles are the same, spindle noses are the same thread pattern. I believe it's a 2.5/8 is what I think they put on these, if I remember correctly. It doesn't want to seat down quite as nicely on my lathe, although it does thread on and seat, and the chuck body runs true. I mean, it does. It would be perfectly acceptable to run it that way. When you clamp material in the jaws, why, they're way out of whack. They're well worn and well abused. Let's pull those jaws out and look at them. We're going to disassemble this anyway. And I've done nothing with this chuck other than to kind of clean the threads up and screw it onto the lathe itself. I wouldn't want to use this chuck for super precision work anyway, but for what I need to turn with it, where everything will be turned in one setup and all machine jaws to fit the diameters that I want, which is why I want 4 different sets of them. Why, at least 4 different sets of them. Why, we can just dedicate a set to, or dedicate this chuck to that. When we look at the jaws, we can see the wear on them. They do have a little bit of crap on them, but they're well worn down here, and we still got some fairly decent serrations there for what it is. So it's definitely seen use. I chucked a piece of 1.25 inch up into the jaws, and run out was about 10 thousandths on it. So it was really bad. So I think we can set it up and utilize those. Like I say, we'll take and mill them off to probably about there, cut our cross slot, and then we'll build dedicated jaws to it. Then we can weld on our rings to hold our parts. So yeah, this is a 7.5-inch Union Manufacturing Company. Definitely seen better days. Yeah, it looks like it's going to bolt on from the front side. Although, what do we got back here? We've got some screw slots. There's some screws on the back. So where do we start? Start on the front, start on the back. We've got some Allen screws here. Let's start on the front. Oh, that was off of there 30 or 40 years ago. I'd actually kind of wanted to leave this project as one for after the planer was done, because I thought it'd be a good project to be machining the jaws with it. So, but that's all right. It separates right here on this line. I can see that. See that separation line there. There we go. Comes right off. Okay, there's our body. Here's our scroll, which actually had quite a bit of grease in it. Doesn't look terribly bad. Each of our little pinions. Lots of gummy old grease in here, so that may be part of the reason that it looks as good as it does. But initially looking at those, that looks pretty good, really. get some little jack screws. Looks like it's got 4 threaded holes here that you can see coming to the outside. I think those are probably just an alignment pin, is what I think they are. Let me grab a couple of bolts here and we'll... Alright, 7/16 for a jack screw. Just about that easy. Alright, so what I'm going to do is run these parts all through the solvent tank. We'll just get them cleaned up and decide what path we're taking. I'm going to shorten up this back plate, I'm sure, because it's got way more spindle thread than we need. I think we can shorten this up probably about 1/2 inch. The overhang on this is about 6.5 inches, whereas with my other chuck it's only about 6 inches, and it doesn't need to be sticking out into space that far. So we'll go ahead and set it back a little closer to the headstock, and like I say, once we tear this all down, we can decide exactly what we're going to do. The main work's going to be on these jaws, as long as everything else looks pretty good. But let me get her in the solvent tank, get her cleaned up, and we'll go from there. Well, we've had some parts in the derusting tank, and this is our back plate, and I'd hoped that it didn't want to thread on all the way. I'd hoped that when it was derusted, it would go ahead and index up tight on the spindle nose from both ends, but it is exceptionally tight here on this end. So what I'm going to do, I think, is we're going to go ahead and set the forejaw up in the lathe, and we'll see if we can't indicate this in. Have to clean off a little more paint, but we'll see if we can't indicate this in, and we'll chase these threads just lightly. I've already got a plug gauge made up that I made up quite some time ago for the spindle nose on the Sheldon, so we'll use that and see how everything's going to fit up, see if we can't get a nice fit on this back plate. It's just I think a real light chase on down through, and then we're going to shorten it up. We can shorten this up from the back end about 3/4 of an inch if we can get the threads good in it. Okay, well, we've got the forejaw chuck on, and we've initially centered this. Now this is our backing plate. We're going to zero it out as best we can. We're going to face off 3/4 of an inch because we've got that much extra material here. Then we're going to go back in and chase our threads until we get a slightly loose fit on our plug gauge here. Now, this is a plug gauge that was made for this lathe. It is just slightly smaller than the spindle nose, so you know it's not a perfect plug gauge, but I pretty much know the fit of it, so I think I know where we're going. So what I'm going to do is, we're kind of at a compromise. When I had the chuck mounted on this and with this backing plate, the chuck appeared to run true. I was relatively happy with it. It didn't seat all the way, but looked like threads were pretty well true in it and alignment was right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero off of this boss, and we'll see how that looks on this inner relief cut that we've got here. You know, we're kind of at a compromise. We're cleaning up threads we've already got, so we're going to indicate this in and see how close we can come and see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do with this is we're going to set it up just about here, I think. And we'll run this down here someplace. If we can find a good place to put it. Maybe we're going to want to come down here. And probably out to about here, maybe. We'll say that's going to be about right. just a hair. That looks like it gets us the clean material all the way around, I do believe. And of course that little bit more there. That looks pretty good, I think. I don't know how well that's going to show up in the camera, but we're going to run with that and see how we do here. Well, we're within about 1/2 and I think that's about as close as we're going to get with this. Let's see what it looks like under power. Be a little bit noisier here, so bear with me. Well, we've got it shortened up. We actually went about 5/8 of an inch. Measuring, we were comparing spindles and everything, so we're just going to take a finishing cut off of this and then break the edge. Break that outer edge just a little bit. There we go. It's at 2 1/4, 8 threads per inch. So let's see what we got going here. Now, since we're picking up threads, we want to come down here like this. May want to go ahead and go in and cut our thread relief first just to make sure we've got enough clearance in there. Because it seems like we're still cutting right at the end of that engagement there. Yeah, we're still a little bit tight. I'd like to see a little more. I can tell already. Yeah, and we're hanging right there. I think we better go ahead, go in and cut our clearances. Yeah, that's good. Want a close fit, but doesn't have to be exact. My personal preference is we want it to index up very close, but I want to index this off the face so we're nice and flat right there. So that's going to do well right there where we're at. Let's go ahead and break those edges. Okay, now let's go back and check our threads and see what we're going to, how much we're going to remove. Okay. You know, when I'm recutting something like this, I'm really in no hurry at all. However long it takes is however long it takes. Close, 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 but still no cigar. Let's check and see if it's going to fit. Now, just in case we need to take a little more off, we won't take it out of our 4-jaw chuck yet. What we'll do is we'll remove our 4-jaw chuck. With our part still installed in it. We're all still zeroed out, centered up. So what we should be able to do is take this, spin it around, make sure our chuck's all clean, or our spindle's nice and clean on the threads. Oop, a little tight. A little tight. I think we want to go just a little bit more. So we back it off of there, flip it back around. Alright, well I think we've got it on there where we want it. So let's go ahead and take it out of our chuck. Oh! I'll put it back on the spindle. There we go. Quite a bit of oil and crap in there yet. Let's see what we got. There we go. We probably could have taken another 1/4 of an inch off of there. But that's alright, that'll tighten that up a whole lot from what it was. On a 1/2 thou indicator. So we're 2.5 with the paint and crap on here. You know, it's not perfect, but there again, for this application, and a lot of guys are going to disagree, but you only have to be as accurate as you need to be. And this chuck's getting set up for one thing. We know it's a wore-out chuck to start with. It will have interchangeable jaws on it, and we may make this into a true adjust chuck. I don't know. We'll see when we get that far. But we've got a back plate that fits back on now. Seems to have a pretty good fit. We're not that far out to where I'm going to be concerned about it. It's going to do the job I need it to do, and that's all that's really important. So, you know, we can go along and say that it's not as accurate as some things, and it's not. But it will do what I want it to do very well, I think, and I've got a dedicated chuck that it's going to take me some time to get it set up, but that's all I needed to do with it. So, anyway, we'll move on and start fitting pieces back together, but at least we've got the back plate cut down and fitted back onto the lathe spindle. So hopefully you found this a little bit interesting, and any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.